Well, good morning to you. We're starting off a new series this week. Hopefully you're here to improve your career branding. Today, we're going to talk all about resume and really how resume is so important in changing how people see you. And we're stuck in an old paradigm of telling our story a very different, older way. And we're going to have to change a little bit of that. Let me just check my remote here, because always better if the remote is working. Even better. So this week, we're going to be Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, starting today. Next week will be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, all at 10 a.m. So you can check out the whole schedule over at selfrecruiter.com. Join in for anything. And for those joining on the West Coast, I know you may be up really early at 7 a.m., but you can also watch this on replay. So hopefully, whichever way is better for you, we will get you the information. So let's jump into today. This is resume renovation. You know, when I thought about putting out my series and how to title and name each of these lectures, this one was particularly challenging because, of course, there's many people that talk about this, and yet somewhere in the title, we have to get the challenge. This is not simply a new coat of paint or a little bit of wallpaper or a little bit of decorative placement. This is a gut renovation. We need to break it down to the studs and reinvent our storytelling so we have a very, very different result. Now, if we're going to fix resume issues, that really requires two different things, and we have to focus on both. Fixing one and not the other is not going to produce the result that you want. So we have to fix both the story itself, which we've probably told in far too old of a way, and we have to tell it in a new way. And we're going to have to dramatically change the formatting because the world has changed. You know, we're in a world now where no one will read. You know, I give talks at the New York Public Library, and when I say that, I like wait for the lightning to strike me, which it doesn't. You know, that portends some awful things for our future, the fact that no one will read. But if you understand no one will read, my gosh, why would you put a sentence on a resume in a world where no one will read? We must distill down to concept communication. Of course, we're going to have to take on some other challenges that have happened over the last few years with the pandemic, everything else. We're going to have to show that we can be effective in a remote way. And that means if we haven't worked remotely, well, maybe we have with the pandemic, but if we're one of those organizations that didn't work remotely, you still need to show that you can be effective remotely. So you may have to go back and retell your story in a slightly different way. Maybe you interacted with offsite vendors or managers or team members, or maybe there was a client or a customer or a partner. Lots of different ways to show effectiveness from a distance, including something like this. Maybe you were involved in internal communications. Maybe you put together conferences or things like that, presented, did webinars. All of those things are effectiveness from a distance that can also showcase just a little bit more about you. Now, again, what I said, we're not simply going to put a little bit of new decoration. We're going to have to go through a full paradigm shift of breaking down the walls and starting over. And that means it's a full metamorphosis. This is the worm or seeming like a worm shedding its skin to become that beautiful butterfly. And how are we going to do it? Now, if you haven't seen me before, John Crant, author, career coach, and speaker, resume and LinkedIn guru as well. Coming right up. Oh, there it is. There it is. You know, this really comes out of my time on a desk as a recruiter. You know, 7 or 8 years as an outside recruitment, 3 different disciplines on a desk as a traditional headhunter, have to go into the competitor company, lure the person out. It's kind of like being a glorified dating guru, really. Very, very close. Maybe I should have gone millionaire matchmaker. And then, of course, ended up being head of training for all the 100 office recruiting system and VP over the whole thing before moving out to do what I've done for the past 10, 11 years. And that is working directly with clients, helping them reset, restage, elevate their career branding by understanding what to talk about and what not to talk about, and how to change all of the formats so things can be absorbed and people can essentially live vicariously within just a few seconds on your resume with the right look. We're going to teach you all about that today and showcase how it works, a few resources that'll help you. Of course, my book is a great resource, Self-Recruiter, Changing the Rules. This is all the secrets I learned in all my time as a recruiter. How do I make my candidate be the standout? How does their resume have to look? How should their LinkedIn look? How do we renegotiate when it's the wrong offer. All of that is in the book, which you can find on selfrecruiter.com or over on Amazon quite easily. And gosh, isn't it a roadmap that'll help you a lot? Some other things, you can hop over to my LinkedIn profile, click on my articles, and there's a number of articles that will even piggyback on the lectures that I give to give you just a little bit more detail. Now, tomorrow is my LinkedIn lecture, but there's a very special version of my LinkedIn lecture on my SelfRecruiter website. So that one's about halfway down the homepage. It's all free, and you can see me large, see the slides large. Really, you can use that as a start and stop tutorial while you build out a very much better LinkedIn profile. So check that resource out as well. Let's get into the series. Now, becoming a self-recruiter covers the entire series. And of course, today as a resume renovator and how we're going to change that story. Becoming a self-recruiter is, yes, thinking about you as the only individual, and you have to manage yourself as a recruiter. This one great candidate, I have to manage, I have to strategize, I have to be the cheerleader to pick them up by the bootstraps if necessary, dust them off to get ready for that next interview after the second place. Well, don't forget, second place is a winner. You don't come in first, second, or third without being a winner. You just didn't get picked. So choose to tune into my interview intervention lecture coming up a little bit later in the series. Really teach you how to teach them how to select you. That's it, our job is. So the other thing about becoming a self-recruiter, it's really networking in a very different way, which is really the use of LinkedIn. So be sure to choose to tune into the LinkedIn lecture. But it also means keeping one eye on that toughest competitor imaginable, those 4, 5, or 6 people that would scare you out of applying for that job. Oh, they're going after it. They're going after it. Forget it. That person. We can beat those people very, very easily because they suffer from something called ego and arrogance. And while I have a little bit of something on my glasses, which is going to drive me crazy the whole time, let me just polish it and get it off here as I'm sweating a little bit on this nice warm day. If you stick your head in the sand, those sparkly, shiny people will beat you every single time. If you put a little planning, forethought, and strategy in place, you can beat them almost every single time because they don't prepare. They wake up in the morning, they splash the water on their face, they get dressed, they go, I'm ready, I did my homework. You got dressed. You know, we all know the challenges of applying online and what happens to us in this rut that we get stuck in. But the way you change all that is, first off, changing your story, understanding that, you know, it's not confessional. You know, I grew up Catholic. I know all about negotiating sin. It's not confessional. There's no sin of omission in your resume or your LinkedIn profile. There's only sin of commission. So every single thing that's there must be absolutely letter true. But you can leave out any part of the story that you'd like. No, this whole process tends to frustrate people, sending into HR and I'm perfect for the job. They never respond. Tends to frustrate people. Tends to leave people thinking about this. You know, I usually say, well, how's your resume working for you? If it's a in-person event, or how's your LinkedIn profile performing for you? How was your last interview? These are all the answers I get. And I have someone in my live lectures in person that goes, that guy, John, that's not very uplifting. Like, not uplifting, but it is part of the problem. And we have to deal with this as well. So if there's something to change, if there's something to correct, absolutely do the assessment and make those changes and quit looking in the rear view mirror, or you're going to miss your opportunity just over the horizon. So whatever it is that is holding you back, whatever wrong decisions you might have made in the past, get over those things. We're going to understand how to take the usual customer expected and leverage the unusual, unconventional, unexpected to our advantage. That's how we're going to be persuasive. We're going to make changes. Now, why is it that a resume still matters? I mean, come on, it's 2023, or whenever you're watching this video, who knows when. I mean, isn't it the electronic age? Isn't LinkedIn everything? LinkedIn's quite a lot. Tune in tomorrow at 10 a.m. But resume still matters, tends to be the first point of contact. Not always, not always. Maybe they noticed your wonderful LinkedIn profile. But most times they tend to really see this great resume and suddenly it draws their attention. And then they begin to take a little closer look. First point of contact. So that's really important. Also, it's part of how you begin to take control of the discussion of how people talk about you, what they say about you. But most people really still don't understand the challenge. We're so in a little box that we've created for ourselves we can't understand how to solve this problem. Now, I'm a big believer in disconnecting emotionally and running it like a strategy game, a little bit of a Sherlock Holmes without the emotion, figuring out how to solve the problem. But you can't solve the problem unless you really understand it. So let's take it by the numbers. This is the real challenge. So if you're after any kind of a decent job, that's 1,000 to 2,000 resumes being sent in. Now, I hope you were listening. I did not say 1,000 to 2,000 qualified candidates. Absolutely not. In fact, 90 to 95% of all of these resumes sent in are absolutely not right for this job. Why are they here? I can tell you. As a recruiter, I saw it all the time. People will see a great job. They know that there's a job for themselves somewhere around that job. They're like, oh, if they're hiring that, when they see me, if they have a need, they'll want to hire me. And then that clogs and jams the entire system, all going to someone in HR, typically, not always, typically, that usually also does not have the correct background in that specific field to make the really best evaluation. Doesn't mean they're bad people. Of course, they have many, many other things to do, but that's just the surface of the challenge, these 1,000 to 2,000 resumes, because you're still not quite thinking clearly. So who can read 1,000 to 2,000 resumes and emails and cover letters? That's 3,000 right there, and still do all of their normal work. I don't know anybody that can do that. So that's not really realistic. And we still don't have full sight of the challenge. We have to back up further, because if this person you're interacting with is titled recruiter, I don't care if that's an external recruiter, headhunter like I was, internal recruiter, working in the HR department, doesn't really matter. If their title is recruiter, a recruiter typically works on 10 open spots at the same time. So it's who can read 10,000 emails, 10,000 resumes, 10,000 cover letters, and you wonder why they don't respond to yours in this snowstorm of resume blindness. After a few dozen, few hundred, you can't tell them all apart. So you have mere seconds to capture their interest, spark their imagination. The right resume has this reaction. They pick it up out of the stack as they're droning out from all these resumes. They go, oh, get them in here, get them on the phone, add them to the list. I don't even know what it is I'm reacting to, but there's something here. That is the right resume. It's not that they read every word and conclude. They see the spark of solution that they need, the spark of magic. Now, what you see on screen here is a little bit of the challenge the individual runs into. We're so focused on trying to solve this problem that we go, I know how to solve it. I'll be cookie cutter perfect. That's what I'll be cookie cutter perfect, fantastic, fantastic. You know, I'm going to take number two. I'm going to hire you. Great. I'm going to pay you less. Oh, you don't want less? Okay. Take number one, take number five. It does not matter. You're all cookie cutter perfect. You begin to see the problem with being interchangeable. So you have to somehow achieve the cookie cutter perfect interchangeable, but also be different, exceptional, somehow step out of line. You have to be more valuable. I don't want to leave you with the idea that you're going to spend 2 hours after this session and have your brand new resume. That's not true either. You may spend 2 hours working on your resume and have the first iteration of your new resume, but very, very likely it is going to require 3, 4, 5, maybe even 6 iterations of the resume to get to the right version. Don't stop too early. The right version will make those doors swing off the hinges. The wrong version leaves it up to them and you end up in that stack. So it takes a lot of work and refinement, because small changes change perception very, very quickly. That means we have to think about the story. Now, we're going to talk about story and format. So let's talk about story here. You've probably told your story the same way for so long, you're not really sure how to tell it another way, right? Well, I think you're going to have to go back and break down the walls and start from scratch. You know, this is what I do with my clients. By the way, if you'd like to work together and have me reinvent your entire background, check out my Self-Recruiter website under the services tab. All my packages are there. If you need to talk before you know which package is right for you, send me a quick email. We'll set up a time to chat. But what I do with my clients, and what you should do for yourself if you're going to do it yourself, is have an inventory meeting. This is a meeting to rediscover all the things you let slide away, slip away, put away, hid away over the course of your storytelling. Go back to the very beginning. Now with clients, this usually takes about 90 minutes. Well, there's no set time. I mean, some people are very expeditious. They're through it in 60 minutes. Some people are 2 hours. I can't really reinvent your story, and neither can you, without recapturing the elements. What are they? So we go everywhere. We're back to the first education. Where you working? Were you doing passionate side things? What were you involved in? What was driving you? What was the decision all about? And then every single event that happens to you after that, and how it happened, and what you learned. And from this meeting that is really exponential ideas in all directions, suddenly I end up with about 8 or 9 pages of notes, and I bet you'll probably end up the same way. Just don't forget, you do want to be capable and qualified. That's the cookie cutter perfect, but you also have to be interesting, different. All things being equal, we hire people because of chemistry and confidence. Number one is chemistry above everything else, assuming you're right for the role. Number two is confidence in you above everything else than chemistry, assuming you're right for the role. And that's before really ever looking at the credentialing, what you've done before, everything else, assuming you're right for the role. So the decision is really down to chemistry. Why? Because that's the part I can't teach. What I really need to be effective as a manager is to hire the right person for my team, not the very best person, maybe the very best person that's the chemistry fit for the team I've constructed or the team I was saddled with, whatever it may be. In fact, you might have come in second place twice and think there's something wrong with me. And maybe they loved you best. Oh, I love that one, best. And yet you feel jilted because they didn't pick you. Oh, they didn't like me. They liked you best. I hope you went back to thank them afterward. You mean like to thank them for not hiring me? Well, I wouldn't use those words, but you might call them back. Now, why do people call back a hiring manager after they don't get hired? For all the wrong reasons. Why didn't you hire me? I do understand we'd like to know. And you do need to deduce that outcome so you understand it and can navigate forward with that knowledge. But never ask it because they can't tell you. So when you call them back and they're ready for, oh, why didn't you hire me? Why don't you go the opposite direction? Hey, good morning, Jack. It's John Crant. I just wanted to call you back and say thank you. Thank you for not hiring it. It was such a wonderful process to talk with you and to learn about your company. And I'm so excited for what's going on. Congratulations on your hire, by the way. You know, that's hard for me to say. Congratulations on your hire. I hope this person really achieves, you know, everything you're looking for. By the way, if they don't, I remain very interested. Don't hesitate to reach back out to me. Now, how little does this person feel? Very, very tiny. Also, that you've opened the door that they shouldn't feel hesitant to coming back to you. If you made a wrong purchase, didn't quite get what you want, I'm right here. And now also, since you're so nice to them, this is where you can strike while the iron is hot, and you can ask them for referrals. You know, where would you look? Why look over at XYZ company? Why didn't they tell me that earlier? That's not their job. It's your job to cause them to think of things to tell you. So as you think about constructing your story and think about how you make all of the normal work things work for you on the resume, you also have to incorporate what drives you. Now, that could have something to do with your work life, could have nothing to do with your work life. I've had clients that, well, I guess it was a few Octobers ago, I was just finishing up a client's resume LinkedIn profile, and suddenly she goes to me, oh, I'm about to be a 4-time marathon runner next week. I'm like, what? You're about to be a 4-time marathon runner? This is the first time John is hearing about it? Well, that doesn't have anything to do with my work. It doesn't? Seem like you're getting a little mature to me. What does a 4-time marathon runner communicate? Drive, ambition, goal, unstoppable, probably really good on my healthcare plan. Oh, they think about it all. So don't leave off the wrong things. Why are you interesting? What makes you tick? What drives you? What also tangentially says why you're so successful in your career, because of how you're also driven in your personal life. You take these 8 or 9 pages of notes and maybe you just grab a highlighter. And with that highlighter, you're going to sit there and you're going to go through and be very, very stingy. And you're going to have to say, well, which one rises to the level of being resume worthy? And very stingy, you go through those notes and highlight. And I bet you right there, you have the core content that must make the cut for the resume. Everything else is negotiable. So you take these notes, which incorporate everything that is potentially about your brand, everything that can showcase you one way or the other. And now you're going to need to put it through a filter. Put it through this singular filter that I talk about in almost every lecture. And that is, why is it going to be the very best business decision they make today if they choose to hire me? That will help you really spotlight and center stage all the right things. Now, yep, I got hit in the head with a brick right after one of my lectures at the public library. Somebody came up to me and said, I've been told all I can expect is more of this. I'm like, what is it? What is it? And I think you already realize I'm well caffeinated. I'm passionate. After talking in an in-person lecture for 90 minutes, adrenaline's running. And right away, I'm about to fall asleep looking at this resume. I'm like, I better ask a question before I fall asleep. What would you like to do? I'm like, love to be in events. I'm like, oh, you have great energy. Have you ever worked in events? Ouch. I'm me holding this resume. It says events coordinator right there. If I can't see it, how do you think anybody else can see it? All I can see is impressive law firm, because that's what this person was being told. Oh, law firm, just more law firm for you. This is the same exact background. This person is an event specialist. They just told their story in such a dull way. No one could ever see them as anything. Oh, I guess you're a law firm person. All sorts of different organizations need wonderful events. So why don't you talk about the events or the photo shoots or the fact that you've done A+ venues like the Heller Gallery or New York Public Library or the Met or Morgan Library and Museum, Lincoln Center. You'd be hired tomorrow. Of course, we're talking through the whole background, and she tells me that, well, it wasn't just that. I was catering the RSVP, everything. Speaker wrangler. I was a speaker wrangler. Speaker wrangler. Well, who are these speakers? Tom Brokaw, Ted Koppel, Mary Matlin, Charlie Rose. Well, some of those names have to be updated. Yes, our story does have to go through some transformation. You're going to have to think about conveying your story in a very different way. You saw right there, without sentence structure, how much more effective that story was. We're going to show you that resume again. Have no fear. We're this product. When you walk down that supermarket aisle, is there any doubt as to the products calling out to you? Oh, I bet you that Kellogg's, the Folgers, and Coca-Cola, whatever it might be, practically reaches off the shelf and slaps you. Look at me. I'm right here. And the store brand fades into the background. We're this product, and we're going to have to think about how we create engagement, which is a whole lot closer to that style engagement through the small changes that change perception about us. It's all how we affect the personal branding, which today we're going to be talking about on resume, but it also, you have to embody it with how you speak. And tomorrow we'll take this whole process over into LinkedIn. Now, before I show you the secrets to improving your resume, let me show you a few resumes I pulled off the internet. It's almost easier to understand what I teach you once I throw a few darts at these resumes. I'm going to make these a little larger. You don't need me quite as large. There we go. Be down in the corner. And so this first one here, Kelly, well, kudos to Kelly on his or her brand. A big name. Yeah, I took off the last name. I figured you didn't need that up there. Big, bold name. Can't miss it. So that's a wonderful thing. And that's the last positive thing I have to say about this resume. I don't think the choice of shades of yellow was a very good choice. When you print it out, it's shades of gray. And really, this resume suffers from what most suffer from, and that's a complete failure to consider information architecture. And so I'm not really quite sure if I'm supposed to start on the left and go across or left and down and then up and right. And really, I have seconds left. Doesn't work at all. Julia, let's talk about this one. Now, I did not write these comments. Someone had collected these resumes on Pinterest, which I'm like, oh, I love resumes. Let's take a look. And so Julia here, on the comment, it says, who said the name had to be at the top anyway? Well, I'll say it. The name has to be at the top. There's certain things you cannot violate, even though the subtitle of my book is Changing the Rules. This is one you can't change. So by Julia putting her name in the middle, it's created an information architecture problem. Am I supposed to read down below first, back up top? And really, the only thing I can see clearly is the reason I would never hire Julia, and that's the dates. Let's be clear. Dates are expected. Dates need to be included. I didn't say all dates, but dates are part of the equation of how you sell yourself. But dates can only hurt you. They never help you. Dates are never the reason I hire you, only the reason I don't hire you. So why would you ever put the dates in front of their eye pattern? A normal resume has a name at the top. Down the left side is employer title, employer title, employer title, education. It's a reverse half moon. That's where the eye pattern is. You can't violate that. So we put the dates right at their eyes. Once you put them in the opposite direction, small, not bold, don't look here. Other thing I can't see are the brands. Now you might say, well, that's not really fair, John, because the brands are blurred out. Okay, well, pretend they're not blurred out. The brands are hidden in the middle of the text. The brands you've worked on determine almost every single ounce of the value as to why you're going to be hired. So to hide those brands so I can't find them really does nothing, because your title alone is meaningless unless I see the level of brand that you did it for. Let's take a look at Martin here. Kudos to Martin on his brand. I definitely get it. Gosh, I've seen this format so many times in so many books over the years. And in reality here, I think it's poor decision making. Why would you choose a format that spends 25% of the entire real estate just telling them your contact information stacked up like a layer cake? That doesn't really make any sense. Don't really understand that or why someone would do it. So what we have to think about here is changing things up. Now, again, information architecture problem. I don't know whether I'm supposed to go down this blue column first and then read right, or how is this supposed to work? And if I just back up, all I can actually see is education, internship, and personal skills. And that doesn't really help us. Let's come a little bit larger. There we go. We have mere seconds to capture their attention. So all of that old-fashioned visual trickery of resumes of yesteryear really doesn't work today. For further clarity, resumes about catching or piquing that interest. LinkedIn, in this 2-document marketing madness that we have to create about ourselves in our personal branding, is where you close the deal as the very, very best. That's not how most people use their LinkedIn profile. But if you didn't finish out that thought, let me finish it out for you. And that is, your LinkedIn profile, in my view, and everything I'm teaching you is my opinion, take it with a grain of salt, right over the shoulder for a little luck. I think your LinkedIn profile should contain much more content than is ever on the resume. It's a reverse of what most people do. This is how you begin to influence how other people see you. So back to this one that was the brick in the head, so difficult to read. I mean, even if you zoom in and you know what you're doing, it doesn't really help you. It's about clarity and influence. That's the clarity of our career path. What's the story? And we have to influence the value of how they perceive us. Suddenly in this telling, it's dramatically different. It's all accessible. Within moments, they know exactly why this one has to make the list. It's a dramatic change that creates engagement, which is closer to that style of engagement, and that begins to change everything. Let's get over to your resume and teach you how you're going to end up with this wonderful, fantastic result. Now, the challenge you still have is you are personally too emotionally close to your own background to probably retell the story in the way that is possible. If you'd like to see what is really possible, gosh, work with me. It's transformative for every client of every field that I work with. We're this product too. Going to come back to every one of these in just a moment. Resume, the new definition. Resumes goals, understanding stacks of resumes, coming back to every one of them, and 3-second test for resumes. Let's go back to the beginning. You are this product too. When a company chooses to hire you, they're really buying a product, or at least they're buying your time and talents, and we get that now. So we have to think about how we want our product to be perceived. How do we get the correct shelf space? How do we stand out from the rest? Resume, the new definition. Oh, you have your pencil or pen or whatever it might be, a little bit of typing ready to go. It's going to be a long one. You ready? Ready? Here it is. A simple sales sheet to create desire. You know, I was standing up on stage at Rainbow Push Wall Street project next to Reverend Jesse Jackson, invited there, pinching myself, going, how did I get here? How did I get here? The only non-African-American on stage, the only male on stage other than the Reverend, and 4 other career coaches besides myself. And I'm like, how do I get here? How did I get here? And I gave my 12-minute motivational pitch and 40 slides riding quickly behind me, boom, 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 boom. And by the way, I got the very first question. There's a roundtable discussion afterward, and I got 30 to 35% of all of the questions. And it was probably the toughest week in my life at that point because my father was in hospice passing away. You know what? Opportunity knocks whenever it does. You have to be ready. You have to go for it. So I'm standing up there and I talk about, creating a desire for your background. And the next coach gets up to give her talk. And she goes, oh, interesting. A resume that creates desire. Oh, well, I think the book is still in print. When I was reinventing myself, I'm like, what? You think the book is still in print and you think you have something relevant to say? A lot of us need to think about it. It's a simple sales sheet. It's a cheat sheet about you. It's a sales sheet that the person you send it to can walk down the hall and effectively sell you to someone else without them having to read it, digest it, conclude, which nobody does. Your resume has some goals. Now, its mission is to deliver the interview, but its goals are a clear, clean, straightforward format. This is a format where the information itself is arranged in such a way that it's not about what you want to tell. It's about what does that decision maker need to hear, want to hear, arranged in a way that can be easily absorbed. Look at that word, absorbed, not read. Of course, we have to clearly inform about educational background as well. Understanding stacks of resumes. Now, if I wasn't clear enough earlier, let me be clearer now. If you're my client and I find out you're applying for jobs online, I'm not really a happy camper. By the way, I know my clients are going to apply for some jobs online, but if that's a job that you really want, my gosh, why don't you break the whole cycle that doesn't work for us and maybe try something different? So if you don't listen to me and you do just apply online, what happens? Well, let's just show you. Resume is going to go off toward a gigantic black hole in space called the data warehouse. If it reaches that, kiss that resume goodbye. But on the way there, it's going to go in front of a person. This is the 1,000, 2,000 resumes where they're droning out, trying to read how these people are different. And very quickly, you're going to be sorted into one of three stacks. There might be somebody in here. That is the good stack. Maybe. Have to come back. Stack 2. But they don't come back. They don't come back because you know what? They have this incoming river of all new resumes. Why would I go back to these people that couldn't quite convey their value to me the first time when I have all new exciting people to look at? Stack 2 is a dead end. By the way, almost any resume that is longer than a single sheet of paper goes to stack 2 by default. Very, very difficult. Stack 3 is the thanks, but no thanks stack. I don't even know why you sent this in here. Secret you may not like to this entire decision about you. It is a literal 3 to 5 seconds. It will never be longer than that. And you're in one of those 3 stacks. And that's the trouble. You have to get your resume into stack 1 or they are never really going to read it. They're certainly never going to read your cover letter. They're never going to read your email statistically until you get down to the 8, 10, 15 that they can really handle in addition to all the rest of their work. So before that, it's all a distillation process, ruling out this one's not right for that. This one's not right for this. In my view, single page resume in every case, unless it's 2, but you see how unhappy I am. No time I'll tell a client it's okay to have a 2-page resume. It's an editing problem. Now, I was giving my LinkedIn lecture over at the New York State Department of Labor. This was a couple of years back. And your resume comes up because resume and LinkedIn are related. And I happen to mention single page resume in every case. And somebody in back flips out like, oh, come on. What if you got a 30-year career and you're a CEO? It's never going to fit. Take a breath. I get it. I don't think you're unhappy because you don't like John's answer. I think you're unhappy because you find yourself sitting at the Department of Labor going, how come no one can see my value? Happens. Not a surprise. This guy hires me, sends me his stuff. It is 6 pages of my eyes bleeding. I can't even get through this CV. Oh, yes, these CV formats that some industries like. If you'd like to be hired, you don't need a CV format. You may need to keep a CV format for your own personal glory and satisfaction and framing on the wall. But if you'd like to be hired, you need a single page resume. Now, this guy's like, you're never getting out to a single page. I'm like, boom, single page with a giant exclamation point. And of course, he's a CEO again. It's an editing problem and you're emotionally attached to your content. Work with someone else if you can't make the cuts necessary. You don't have to tell everything. You just have to tell the ruby, diamond, emerald, drop of perfume, nugget of gold, those things we have to tell. So on this single page resume, what are we looking at? We're looking at your name, which is your brand, looking at your current or last 3 employers and titles, and we're looking at your educational background. Now, right after I give this lecture in person, people, I'll hear them saying, oh, John said, just put the last 3 employers on the resume. I'm like, I did? When did I say that? I certainly did not. I said what we're looking at. If you asked me what I would like to be on a resume, oh, I'm so glad you did. I would like a resume to be complete from the time you went to the workforce to today. Are you listening? I didn't say that was the right solution for you. In fact, if your career goes back into the 1970s, I don't need to see that part of it. Maybe I do need to see those brands, very, interesting way of disclosing the brands without the dates, but I don't need to think about you from the 1970s. So we need to change the way things are said. But the last three employers and titles, that's for time relevance of skill. That's why those three are so important. Now, if you have your resume, go ahead and pull it out while I grab a tissue. Oh, let me see if I can go back. Sorry about that. A 3-second resume test. So don't look at your resume yet, but when I tell you, you're going to look at your resume as someone that, I don't know this person. I know it's you. It's going to be a little bit harder. And then when I tell you to stop, just tell yourself what you know about this person. Go ahead and take a look. And stop. And I gave you the full benefit of the doubt for anybody not looking at their own resume. They saw me count to all the way to 1005. You're never getting longer than 5 seconds. You're in one of those stacks. Most people look up from that in live session, in-person session, and they go, oh, I can't tell you anything about this person. And it's me. I'm like, that's not a good resume. So we'll show you how that works in our refinement process coming up. I object to objectives all of the time. Objectives, core competencies, highlights, everything I've accomplished since kindergarten. Over the course of our career, it tends to collect all at the top of the resume, and we don't read a single word of it because we know you're trying to manipulate us and influence us, probably trying to sell old skills or something, like trying to distract me. So let's throw all of that out, use that space for something very, very different. I call it positioning title. Simplest iteration, that's 4, 5, or 6 words that encapsulate what you're all about, why you're special. In a more complex background, it could be 2 or 3 lines of 4, 5, 6 words. Just enough so it's absorbable, and I know instantly who you are as a product before I've ever looked at one single of your employers. So again, we take a look at this brick in the head and think about, well, how do we start here and transform? Even if we look closely, you see there's a lot of detail here. I mean, look at this profile at the top. That's all I really see is the word profile. High energy detail. Lost my interest really quick there. Doesn't really work. So high energy events planner, specialist. Gosh, right away, it's in my brain. What do I think of this person? High energy events planner, specialist. And then I begin to absorb who they did it for, which changes everything. Here's a few others from different people: campaign director, media PR, community liaison, a little more complex background. I'll walk you through this resume coming up. But your resume probably is this old, like, blocky text that has to disappear. Free yourself of sentence structure. Distill your best ideas down to concept communication and work backwards as you reinvent your story. That's going to help you. That's how you take something like this and you go, well, oh, I see a lot of the stuff is here, but oh, I see some bad habits, like bad language, like coordinated, facilitated, maintained, duties. That's not language anybody wants to hear unless you're going to be a very low-level rudimentary worker. We need to change our language to more dynamic language if we're going to include it. And we have to have consistency. Like, you can't go from dates with a 2, T-O, and dates with a dash because you didn't just pay attention. All of it has to work together harmoniously. It's all here, can all be absorbed within seconds. I can glance at any single bullet, and it's right in my brain. Further down the resume, this rest of this story, this person was so worried about being too mature, they didn't want to show back in the early 90s. And so they cut off Martha Stewart living. You want to work in events and you cut off the fact that you worked for Martha Stewart Living or House Beautiful magazine, where you did event-related things at Guggenheim Museum or European Travel and Life magazine. And yes, there's a whole other section of career before this that we didn't need to show. But don't cut off the things that sell you. Eventually, you're still going to have to walk through that door and meet them, or meet them over video. And we can only hide so much. We are what we are. Sell your expertise and wisdom and quit worrying about the other things. Now, this resume, I flashed this one earlier. A good story behind this. I had a guy come to me from the Carolinas, and he said, I had a great run. I'm in contract furniture sales, like selling 1,000 desks. Had a great run, great run. I'm so done. I'm so done selling contract furniture. I need to go back. I need to get into hardware, software, and services. I'm like, oh, that's a great field. Have you ever done it? Yes, 15 years earlier. So this gentleman's issue was to sell 15-year-old experience, because every time he sent his resume out now, they're like, but we don't need a furniture salesperson. I'm like, well, quit talking about furniture. Also, since this was the last 11, 12 years when we worked together, suddenly his entire resume was that story, because he felt like, well, that's the current story. I'm like, so we distilled down his accomplishments to this super paragraph, which then allowed us to expand it earlier and showcase the fact that he already had software, hardware, and services. Also, with everything for furniture here. Now, you might know Price Modern as a brand. I did not. Hayworth, I certainly did know. And other than the words corporate office furnishings, there's not another word here about it. You're a salesperson. Talk about sales. Achieved $50 million cumulative sales to date. Ranked top 10 in revenues every year since blah, blah, blah. Developed a strong pipeline. This is every single thing that would make someone jump out of their chair. Get this person in here. Get them on the phone. I have to add them to the list. Another resume to teach you something a little different. There's a whole resume above this. At some point, you may want to begin to cut a little bit of background if the background gets too long. And yet you don't want to lose your value. So in this person's case, we decided to start their resume or stop their resume, depending on the way we look at it, with EDS, Electronic Data Systems, in 1999. And we dropped all other dates prior to 1999. And right away, even though intellectually we realize the story goes further back than 1999, it ends at 1999 as far as this brain is concerned. That's where the brain works. So EDS, Electronic Data Systems, is one of those companies. You know, in every field, there's certain companies that are like, you work for that company, you must be very, very special. So EDS has that reputation, as does 2 of the 3 prior employers. So right after EDS, we go prior employment, we list 3 people, and PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC, and Kaiser Permanente, they have that same reputation as, you must be very special. There's 3 crown jewels within eyeshot that all say, I'm the one, baby. Now, you notice we dropped those dates. If we included those dates, this person is 17 years older. Anybody need to be 17 years older next time you go interview? Well, maybe a few of us, but not very many of us. So that's a big win. Also, let me point out some sizing. Sizing is coming up, but let me point out this sizing. On the prior employment, that is very tiny. Mistake people make is they think stuff has to be large to be effective. That is probably 8-point bold on the brands. That's probably 7.5 non-bold italics on the title. It's probably down to 6 on locations. And that whole three employers is probably 3/4 of an inch. Very effective. It's like the drizzle on top of the dessert, or the sprinkle on top of that, or that cherry on top of that. They won't miss it. They won't miss it. Bottom part of the resume, let's teach you a little bit more. Big believer in splitting the bottom of the resume. Only way to truly be effective in a single page. You'll notice there's 3 universities here, but only 2 of them are treated the same way, because one is a certificate. One is a certification. That is not the same thing as a degree. And that certainly doesn't trump the degree. So no matter if this is your field, by the way, that PMP over on the far right, you're probably jumping out of your chair. PMP, put it on my forehead. Put it on the top of the resume. No, it belongs where it belongs. That's the cherry on top. They won't miss it. They won't miss it. And he's going after the PMP too. By the way, if you get so enamored with something like your PMP or a CPA or any other few characters you'd like to put up there, what you could do is put your name, comma, PMP, and suddenly you find a way to sneak it to the top of the resume. Now, we talked about the story issues. We were beginning to talk about the format issues, but let's go deeper. On your LinkedIn profile, you have an address line. You need to make sure your address line is simplified. That's just an option on LinkedIn. Tune in tomorrow to find out how. Simplify that LinkedIn, and then at the top of your own resume after your name, you start with your LinkedIn URL, followed by the city, state. Nope, don't need the address. We don't hire you because you live at 123 any street. Email address and the cell phone number. Yes, cell phone number. Even if you can't get your cell phone in your house, the cell phone number. The 2 things we want, obviously, are right, easily accessible. If you've already convinced, ready to go, call me. If not quite, click on that LinkedIn profile to be further convinced. Then what we have to do is go in and manipulate the distilled down story. Sizing is coming up. Sizing, by the way, is the only thing not written down somewhere. You should write down the sizing. In case you need to know why you should listen to me on the sizing, before ever going into recruiting, I ran a pre-press service bureau, which means I really do understand line, type, spacing, both between the characters and between the lines, and how that affects absorption. So you can take this sizing to the bank and it will work very, very well for you. So all the brands, that's Good Samaritan, Salvation Army, United Way, any other employer, those are all 10-point bold. In fact, what we're going to do is start by making everything on the page 10-point. And then we're going to go down from there. These are not for you. You have the wrong idea on font size. So 10-point bold, we're going to go in and make those employers bold so they stand out. And then comma, location, and dates. I hope you've noticed they're not bold, but they're also nowhere near 10-point. Those are 7-point in this example. Because while location and dates are expected, that's not the story. Get those to disappear a little bit into the background. Look at Salvation Army and United Way, a little more traditional employer title. It's 2 points of space after the brand. I'll show you how to add that space coming up. And so when you look at Good Samaritan Village, there's this extra line. Now, the rest of the story here is this is my cousin, Betty Jo, and she moved from New York to Florida. Not a very good move. I understand why some people do it, but didn't really check out the fact that they don't have an actual safety net in Florida. If you're used to a real safety net in New York and you realize you get to Florida, there's no safety net. It's like, wow, by the seat of your pants. And so she gets down there and she's having trouble landing a new job. And of course, I spent 13 years in Florida before I escaped myself. And I can tell you every second or third mobile home or trailer park in Florida ends in the word village. There's nothing wrong with working in a mobile home or trailer park, but this is not. This is another significant employer. Can't possibly have that misstep happen. If one of your brands is unknown to the random person next to you, you may need this line that kind of sets it out and says what this brand is all about. The nation's largest non-for-profit long-term care organization, another significant employer. If you need that, it's 8-point in size, 2 points of space after it. You don't use it if you don't need it. You need that real estate for yourself. But if the brand is unknown, don't let them make a mistake. Everything as far as the titling, I like a 0.5 point less than the brand, which means I like it 9.5 in size, not bolded because then it fights with the brand for attention, but italicized so both draw attention and they work in harmony with one another. Each bullet point set you can highlight one at a time. And bullet point sets, you go 8.5 in size. When you do, they're going to get a little tight, a little hard to read. And while they're highlighted, we'll fix that. And we're going to add space after every single bullet. And that screen is still coming up on how to do it. And it's 1.75 points of space after every bullet. And magically, the breathing room returns. You go, it's just absorbable somehow. Yes, proper pre-press balance. So a little bit there on things to think about. You may have noticed Betty Jo's name was quite large. Yes, we violate my own rules and we make it 18-point bold, big bold, don't miss it. So think about all these spaces. You can have a lot of different dimensions and changes and everything else, but you have to make a rule list. As long as you make a rule list and stick to it, people will look at the resume and go, this just works somehow. I don't understand why it's so readable, even though I'm trying not to read it. Now, how do we add that space? Now, here's where I have to make an apology on behalf of Microsoft, which puts out some of the lousiest software out there. And you know, Microsoft Word is a great example of the worst of the worst. Yep, I do resumes in Word just like everybody else. But if you dare send that Word version to anybody else, you have no idea what it actually looks like. That's the problem with the program, and they've never bothered to fix it. So in the end, we're going to make this a PDF, but right now we have to fix the spacing. So your version of Microsoft could look something like this, could look like a completely different animal, and that's because they put out about 20 different versions of their Word. If your version looks different, learn the concept here and go search for the solution on yours. So for myself, this is to add space after the title or after the brand or after the bullet. I simply go to Format, down to Paragraph. box pops up, and part of that box says points after, and I'm simply going to put the 2 or the 1.75 or even after professional experience and education, I like 8 points after that. By the way, those 2 labels, I like them 7-point bold, but a little bit gray, so they disappear in the background. A little more sizing there. Another thing is to add space between the characters or even condense the characters. Maybe you have a bullet point that slips onto a second line, but oh, barely, that doesn't look good. Well, I can either expand or contract the character spacing, go up to format, this time down to font. Box pops up, I have to click advanced, and suddenly you realize I can expand, you know, or contract the character spacing. If it's up in the positioning title, I may want to expand, you know, a little bit there, or if it's the contact line, I may want to expand that by 1, 2, 3 points to get it to nice fill across the page, be easily readable. By the way, the contact line, 7-point. And it's going to become like this and be unreadable, but when you expand it out, perfectly readable at 7-point. I put on my glasses to call you and go, there's your number, and I call you. And your contact information doesn't distract away from your story. 2, 3, 4, 5 iterations to get to the right version. Don't stop too early. Work pedigree. Pedigree. We're thinking about horses, dog food. Well, we've got the right word. Okay. So you may get the 3 to 5 seconds to look at the resume, but you're probably not still connecting the dots the same way I am. We're looking at the quality of these companies, titles and accomplishments, even though we said we wouldn't look at those, and educational background. Here's your proof. World's simplest resume, Todd Smith. Nestle USA, Director of Quality Assurance. Kraft Foods, Quality Assurance Manager. Coca-Cola Company, Quality Assurance Engineer. University of Florida, based in agriculture. If this is all that's on the resume, I guarantee it's the simplest resume in the world. And yet everybody watching still has an opinion about Todd. What can I get? Oh, I see, has the degree, usually a pretty good thing. Oh, I see nice career track. I see engineer to manager to director. Oh, look at this. Look at these 3 stellar companies. These are A+ companies. These are stellar brands, aren't they? Now I have a long-term client that's worked for Liberty Media. Well, even before that, GTE Internetworking, which became Genuity, Liberty Media, Level 3 Communications, Nokia Siemens Networks, Cisco Systems, Motorola Solutions, and on and on. Every single one of those companies, big brands, I mean, they're like a meat grinder inside, chopping up their employees, spitting out the parts as fast as they can reorganize at every moment of their existence. I never worked food and beverage. Are these like that? I don't know. Probably. Could be one of the rare companies that is really, really great, but it's probably the meat grinder like everybody else. But let's show you the effect of these brands. You're the boss. You have to hire this position, and you're looking at Todd here. You only have 1 spot left to interview. Todd or this other person. Todd or this other person. By the way, other person has the same University of Florida BS in agriculture, the same engineer to manager to director. Oh, but they did it for 3 food and beverage companies you've never heard of versus Todd. The other one or Todd. There's no question here. Todd gets this interview every single time. That's the power of the brands. So you can't change who you did work for, but you could change who you work for in the future. My advice to you is, if possible, I know we all have to keep cash flow going, but if possible, you never again take a job for any organization that the person next to you has never heard of. That does not help your brand. Now, you saw a resume with nothing on it. Value everywhere, but nowhere to be seen. Where you're about to lose is what you put under those employers and titles. So achievements have to be bullet pointed, have to have tangibles, deliverables, be absorbable. Very, very important. That means we're going to focus on all of these things that I don't have to really repeat for you. Make sure you have enough of these dynamics, because it's about how you change things. You make things happen. The dynamism that you bring. Let's go over to degrees. Degrees of degrees. Have you received in hand your college degree? I know it's a very strange way to say it. I learned to ask it that way as a recruiter when I found out people were lying to me. You know what 3 credits shy of a degree is? No degree. You know what I didn't pay that $168 I still owed the university is? No degree. You either have the degree or don't have the degree. Truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. If you didn't finish the degree, still tell your great story of contribution. Put your college or university, put your coursework toward the field of study, not a coursework toward a BS and whatever. That's too close to the baloney. You can't be pulling a 3-card Monty on education that will not work well for you. Talk about all the things you've done in your work life to deliver. The education was an earlier choice that you made, where you either made it correctly or didn't make it correctly. Designing your resume. Well, I mean, you know, your object here is to move your brand forward, help them visualize your career, the achievements, everything else. Of course, bring the educational background to life. The last word about Word, even though I gave you some of it before, you know, if you dare follow advice and send in a Word document, you have no idea. So all this work to make your resume fantastic. Go over to my YouTube channel, Self-Recruiter YouTube channel. Check out my Headless Horseman video. It will walk you through how you convert your final resume over to a PDF, which would be perfect no matter what computer is looking at it, what system's looking at it, and what system created it. And wherever you are in your resume process of reinvention, take your first step and repeat. And repeat and repeat and repeat. Now, a lot of people can't do this for themselves. If you need help, check out my Self-Recruiter website under the Services tab. If you'd like to talk before you know which package is right for you, reach out. We'll set up a time to chat. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., we're going to do the same type of lecture, all about LinkedIn and how you showcase your brand and change things there. You can check out the rest of the calendar over on my Self-Recruiter homepage. And I thank you guys for tuning in today. You know, take back the control for yourself. It starts by beginning to get the credit that you deserve, that you should have had already. And that then changes every conversation you have after that. Thank you guys for tuning in today. No matter whether you're checking me out on Facebook, LinkedIn, or you're watching on my YouTube channel itself, or maybe even on replay. I hope you like, comment, share with your friends, all that kind of fun stuff. And thank you guys for tuning in. Take care. Have a great day.